Hi, I'm Ken Howard, and welcome to the Gay Therapy LA podcast. Today, I want to talk about gay men's relationship vocabulary. Partner, husband, hookup, which are you? In my long 29 years in 2021 career as a specialist in therapy for gay men and gay men's coaching, I've helped many guys in many different kinds of relationship styles. Along these styles comes a commensurate vocabulary or vernacular that gay men use to describe and understand their relationships and the people involved in them. It's kind of the language of a gay male subculture of society, with occasional overlap with terms used in straight relationships, such as husband or spouse. Part of the self-empowerment, self-empowerment, have the life you want, is the name of my book, available on Amazon. A little plug there. Self-Empowerment, Have the Life You Want by Ken Howard, LCSW. Part of that self-empowerment of gay men is understanding who they are in relationships and what they want to be. Now, sometimes these are congruent, and sometimes there's a gap that guys are looking to change between what they are and what they'd like to be. Often, for example, I hear how a single guy might have a fuck buddy, but what he really wants is a partner or husband. So let's review a list of these terms. There are about 16 of them. And I'll give you some of my thoughts on what they might mean for our gay male community in general and for you in particular. Number one, daddy. This term is a slang term for a gay man who is no longer considered very young, and while he doesn't necessarily have actual children, he might embody some positive signs of aging, such as education, knowledge, career success, financial stability, and taking care of himself that provides for a healthy, attractive body and a personal sense of style. Many gay men, myself included, resisted moving into the daddy stage of life approximately just after 40, because it can signify getting older. But being a daddy can have its advantages too. It can confer a certain prestige that, hey, you've made it this far in the far too often homophobic society and you live to tell about it. In a relationship, being a daddy doesn't mean that you always pick up the dinner tab on a date, but it can. This term is probably best understood in the context of what are the expectations in a relationship when one partner, or maybe both, is a daddy. It might imply a financial imbalance in the relationship of how the partner's incomes differ. There's another episode of the Gay Therapy podcast that talks about when you and your partner's incomes differ greatly and how to avoid the pitfalls and the resentments that might come with that. Or it might imply that daddy knows best, and this partner might serve in an unofficial mentoring role to a younger partner, a younger gay man. Number two is the sugar daddy. Now, this term is a slang for an older gay man who substantially supports a younger gay man. I don't really like the term because the implications for mutual exploitation are enormous. The older partner gets objectified for his money, while the younger partner gets objectified for his youthful beauty. Objectification is not a solid base on which to form a relationship. So while plenty of these relationship styles exist, gay and straight, I maintain that any relationship that is not a match made in heaven, but is a match made at the bank, is asking for trouble in the long term. I think it's best when each partner in a gay male relationship makes his own money and has his own career or source of income, and the presumptions of a great income disparity are left out. Number three, twink. More slang referring to a young gay man, often slight or thin, but also considered pretty or innocent. Part of the several things that make me uncomfortable about the term twink is that it has hints of misogyny, feminizing young gay man as being weak or passive or helpless, the way women were once referred to as the fairer sex or the weaker sex. It has implications of emasculating grown adult men. However, the positive side to the use of this term can imply a youthful spontaneity, optimism, energy, being fun-loving, a lack of cynicism, at least not yet, and budding with promise in adult life. And this is often paired with a daddy, which is the opposite role. So I recommend that you just ponder this term to see how much being a twink applies to you, and consider what your assumptions or expectations are in using the term. How can embracing the twink identity be a positive self-concept? What are the risks of it to watch out for? Like others of these terms, is there a way to embrace the qualities, the positive qualities implied with the term, but de-emphasize the negative qualities implied with the term? Number 4 is a twunk. That's a variation of a twink. A twunk is generally considered a hybrid of twink and a hunk, meaning that instead of being young, lithe, and thin, it means a hunk who might be especially muscular. In the bodybuilding sport, younger men tend to put on muscle at a faster rate, so it's relatively easy to achieve this twunk look if you want, with sound workouts and a smart diet. And while twink can imply a pejorative, twunk might be seen as having both youthfulness and muscularity. Number 5, the leather man. The gay men's leather subculture, which emerged just after World War II, has evolved a lot over the years. Today, the rules of being a leather man have loosened a bit, and the subculture is less rigid than the old guard. Relationships among gay men who identify as leather men imply a particular ease with sexuality and a celebratory embracing of the importance of sexy self-expression, such as wearing various leather gear, rubber gear, not only in gay bars, but in general settings. The hashtag Gear365 implies the self-empowerment, that word again, of gay men who assert their sexual self-confidence, community pride and identity, and sense of brotherhood and community service in all settings without fear of being ostracized. Many gay men in the Gear365 hashtag identity report that wearing their leather gear in public neutral spaces like public transportation or airport gates in an airport gets not condemnation but admiration from others, including many straight people who admire the leather man's bold self-expression. Check out the hashtag Gear365 on Instagram sometime, and you'll see these guys who really make an art form out of not only being gay men in leather gear, but also a bold self-expression that then seems to give a green light to others to express themselves very openly too. So while often leather men form relationships with other leather men, there can be mixed relationships, and the implications for being into BDSM or kink play are optional. This identity in relationships is often a phase 2 of the coming out process, and it can be associated with bolder self-expressions in gay men further past the time that they come out. There would be stage 1 or phase 1 of coming out as gay, and then phase 2 might be coming out into a gay subculture like the leather scene. Number 6, the gym bunny. While often seen as a pejorative slang, gay men do tend to form relationships with guys similar to themselves. That's the homo in homosexual. It means same, including in body type, in addition to age group, socioeconomic status, ethnicity, but not always. In my practice, I very often see gay male couples in therapy who are from different nationalities or ethnicities, and I think there's kind of an opposites attract kind of way that I've seen. It's not that gay male couples who are of mixed race or ethnicity have more problems and seek therapy. I don't think that's it. I think it's just living in a very diverse city like Los Angeles, where I am. The population, including the gay population, is very diverse, and then people of all kinds of different nationalities and backgrounds form relationships. So I've written about how gay men and their relationship to the gym can be particularly positive and healthy. There are previous episodes, and if you go to gaytherapyla.com and search on gym, there'll be a number of articles about that. Two young gay men or even older might pair up because they're both muscular guys, but having being muscular in common is not what I would call a fundamental building block in a successful gay relationship. Whereas other building blocks, such as commitment, communication, and compromise, there's a previous episode on those, the 3 building blocks of commitment, communication, and compromise. That's what the building blocks really are. So you have to be careful about forming relationships based on something convenient, like financial status or level of muscularity. That doesn't really have great implications for the long term. Number 7, let's look at 2 of these, 7 and 8, the master and slave. In the master, similar to the Leatherman previously, some gay male relationships are indeed part of a fascinating master-slave relationship style. And this would be a subculture of gay life. And this type of relationship dynamic can have a profound positive implication for things like intimacy, commitment, fun, security, bonding, and a profound attachment. So while certainly a minority of gay male relationships, some guys can get a lot of benefit from being a part of this kind of relationship subculture, the master-slave, which is an identity that's cultivated over time, and learning a certain folk knowledge about the leather or the BDSM subculture, as many aspects of the kink or the BDSM community are not taught in colleges or anything formal, but are taught by one another within that community. And like so many of these, you might want to ask yourself if this type of identity might be rewarding for you. What would it be like for you to be part of this subculture style of relationship? And with the slave, what makes a guy drawn to the master identity? What makes a guy drawn to the slave or the sub identity? These types of relationships have been far too often demonized or denigrated by others, including ignorant therapists, of which there are many, and certainly by anti-gay religious conservatives of many different faiths and traditions. But as a trained sex therapist, as I am, we know that a relationship style that has these bold dynamics can be profoundly rewarding for the partners involved. And guys are entitled to the self-empowerment, that word again, to select that lifestyle for themselves, the master-slave relationship. You can't choose your sexual orientation, but you can choose your style of relationship. And sometimes I think those things get confused in social discourse. You can certainly control different aspects of it, and each couple would do that for themselves. Being a kink-aware and kink-affirmative therapist like me can help guys drawn to all kinds of relationship styles to get the support that they need, not to be judged or denigrated, ew, what's that, or even subtly, ew, what's that. I think the more subtle version of ew, what's that, is more destructive than the overt one. But think about whether or not experimenting with master-slave dynamics might be interesting or fun for you. Number 9, are you a hookup? I hear a lot about gay men being or just having a hookup, which can be both a noun and a verb, when what they really want is a more serious, committed, long-term relationship. The sometimes tug of war between a reasonable need for self-gratification, Mr. Right Now, can sometimes feel antithetical to a long-term relationship, Mr. Right, but not necessarily. Hookups can become dates who become partners and even spouses, and I think partners and spouses would do well to occasionally treat their partner or spouse with the same sexual spontaneity and abandon of a hookup. I believe there is far too much politeness in long-term gay relationships that can squash sexual desire. And I had a podcast episode recently about reviving sexual activity in a relationship after a hiatus. But sexual self-empowerment means that in any given moment, you are free to choose if or when to hook up with another consenting adult, and when to focus on the conversational, interpersonal, social, or even intellectual aspects of a relationship. Number 10, lover. This is maybe an antiquated term we would say now, but when I was a kid in the 70s, if you heard about gay relationships at all, this term was used to describe one's significant other. It's funny how that word, lover, has all but disappeared, but for gay men at that time, in that generation, it was the most common word to use to refer to the person you lived with or had a relationship with. And I kind of wonder, what terminology do we have today that will disappear in the years ahead that we find common now? It'll be something. We won't always have the same terms in the future that we do now, just like lover has been retired. But think about how you would feel if you say, I am someone's lover, or you referred to someone else as, oh, he is my lover. Think about what that might mean. Some people say it was too sexualized, that lover just implied sexual lover, love as in sex. That was maybe one of the arguments, in favor of retiring the term. But other people might say just the using the word love means that this is someone I love, and lover just was an extension of the word love, and they wanted the association with the word love. Number 11, chutoi. This funny term is more than a bit objectifying, but it's meant playfully to describe someone who might serve as a third sex partner to an established gay couple, for example. And it evokes how a dog might be very devoted to a rubber squeaky toy and chew on it and play fetch with it for hours. I have lots of experience in that as a dog daddy. So, while the term chew toy to refer to a grown man, it might be, a bit controversial, this term can help make a discussion in the couple more lighthearted, although, it is referring to an actual human being in this way. That can be controversial. That can be risky in terms of more serious consensual non-monogamy or poly relationship issues. I also have training in consensual non-monogamous relationships. I work with both. I work with strictly monogamous, and I work with consensual non-monogamous or open couples. And there are many shades of gray, so to speak, in between those relationship styles. But think about that. Have you ever been a chew toy for a couple? Have you ever been a special guest star and in a three-way? And that can be just a really fun thing to think about. But for the long term, that might lose a little bit of its luster. Or how about this one, number 12, a fuck buddy. While somewhat new to the gay world lexicon, certainly since the days of lover, this term is popular because it gives words to signify a relationship that is more than a platonic friendship, but less than a partner. It implies a social relationship that can be fraternal, friendly, casual, and very benevolent, but also with a focus on sex and not on anything else domestic or serious or requiring much work. So it can be a term that guys might find frustrating. You might say, oh, I'm just his fuck buddy, but I want to date him. So think about, if you're someone's fuck buddy or you have someone who is, do you like that term? Does that work for you? Think about what might be good and what might be bad about that arrangement. Number 13, paramour. Now, this more fanciful term is useful in that it means basically around love or adjacent to love. And I've used this term in my practice to describe how in a gay couple, one or both primary partners might have a guy on the side who was a relationship of more than just a brief duration, and the straight equivalent of this might be a married straight man with a mistress. But sometimes in a primary dyad, two partners, it might not be a polycule, like in a polyamorous relationship. It may just be a paramour that one of the partners has. Number 14, what about friends and exes? You know, not all friends are exes, and not all exes are friends. But in the gay male world, there can be some overlap or a blending of who is just a friend, implying non-sexual platonic, versus who is something more, implying the romantic or the erotic. Again, this term of a friend or an ex can be a source of frustration, such as when a guy is just a friend, but you want to date him. So are you a friend? And who are your friends? Is there somebody who's a friend to you that you wish was a different term? Maybe you wish he was a partner. Maybe you wish he was a fuck buddy. Maybe you wish he was a chew toy for you and your partner. Number 15, companion. You know, straight society used to love to use this term as a gentle and very non-threatening, straight accommodating way to describe gay relationships, such as in the old days of AIDS obituaries in the 80s and 90s might say something like, oh, he is survived by his longtime companion. There was a movie by that name, Longtime Companion, that kind of took that term and really made it the title of a movie about someone who had died of AIDS. It was also used in the past, say, throughout the 20th century or so, to describe both gay men and lesbians who were out of the closet in a very subtle way, but very discreet to avoid public scrutiny, much less, at work or in the local neighborhood. Oh, Apartment 201? Oh, that's Mr. Jones and his companion, Mr. Hernandez. It has a slight tinge of undermining the seriousness of the relationship and is a slight jab at denigrating gay relationships as not on a par equally with straight relationships. Number 16, partner. That's perhaps the most commonly used term among these for a long-term domestic cohabiting relationship used by both gay and straight communities alike. Although, when I hear it used in the straight sense, I bristle just a little bit that it feels like some kind of cultural appropriation from the LGBT community. If a straight person talks about their partner, I'm like, huh? But I think they say that to imply something more, maybe a little more sophisticated than replacing the word boyfriend or girlfriend in both the gay and the straight sense. I use this term for my own relationship before my husband and I were married. So that brings us to the last one, number 17, husband. Although some gay men use the word husband before marriage equality was legal in any state in the United States, to insist that their relationship had the same quality and integrity, value, and respect as heterosexual marriages, it wasn't until the Supreme Court legalized marriage equality in the United States that more people, including me, started using it. There is some question on whether using husband versus partner is too heteronormative to stomach, but I believe in total equality, which you'd be surprised many people, including some gay men, do not. It took me a little while to get used to using the term husband with others because I was outing myself. There's a previous article, I don't think it's on a podcast, it's an article on gaytherapyla.com called Coming Out Over and Over. And go to gaytherapyla.com/blog, and in the search box just search on coming out and you'll find a couple like that. But I found myself kind of outing myself by using husband when I was arranging for a home repair a number of years ago. I said something like, Wednesday at 3 p.m.? Oh, sure, that's great. I won't be home, but my husband will be. He can let you in. And I think of the use of terminology that has actually helped the general public normalize and accept same-sex relationships more profoundly. Because once they hear my husband or my wife, Jane Lynch, the lesbian actress, has said, mentioned her wife, or Ellen DeGeneres and Portia de Rossi might say my wife. And I think that contributes a little bit toward just hearing it and becoming almost desensitized to the idea of same-sex partners from a high visibility. And we know that social acceptance of same-sex marriage in the United States has been rising quickly and dramatically in recent years, which is really cool. That's really heartwarming news. And we wonder sometimes if the use of husband or wife in same-sex relationships might have contributed to that equality. So think about that. With all those, with companion or partner or husband, what term would feel right to you? Which one do you use? Or which one would you like to use if you were in a relationship and you're not currently? So now that we have this overview of all these terms, and there would be more that I probably left off the list, hopefully a review of them makes you reflect a bit and consider what each of these terms brings up for you emotionally. Which of the terms apply to you, and how do you feel about that? Are the terms that apply to you the ones that you want to apply to you? Are there terms that don't yet apply to you but you would like them to? Something you aspire to, or something that maybe you want to cultivate in the year ahead for yourself? Are there terms that describe your relationship roles or feelings that aren't on this list? If there's a gap between who or which term you are there ways that you could change your thinking or your outlook or your attitudes or your behaviors or your social interactions that might help narrow the gap between where you are and where you'd like to be? That's the kind of the subtitle of self-empowerment. My book is Have the Life You Want, but it's also how to go from where you are to where you want to be. The actions of changing and thinking your approach might be areas that would be ripe for us, to work in therapy or coaching services in an LGBT affirmative and more specifically gay male affirmative with me as your provider, as your therapist or coach. So if this might interest you, please get in touch. You can always call or text my cell in the United States. It's 310-339-5778. That's 310-339-5778. Or you can email me at Ken, K-E-N, at gaytherapyla.com for more information on the services that gaytherapyla.com offers, either with me or one of my associate clinicians. And if you have suggestions for future podcast episodes, you can send me those too. And maybe some terms that you like that weren't on the list. I'd be curious what you would think about that. So, thanks for listening, and I hope you become, in this new year in 2021, at the time of this recording, I hope that you become whatever term you want to be in gay male relationships. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.